Here we go. Welcome to another edition of Out of Bounds here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM, AM 1220 KHTS. It is 12:07. Matt Frieda here with you until 1 o'clock this afternoon. Phone number to join, as always, 661-298-5487. We've got lots to do today, but the focal point for at least the first 30 minutes of today's show is, of course, going to be about Damar Hamlin. You probably know by now, even if you're not a sports fan, Damar Hamlin, the player for the Buffalo Bills, who suffered cardiac arrest on the field on Monday evening against the Cincinnati Bengals. Hamlin is a safety on defense. He had tackled a player on the Bengals. He got up from the ground and then almost immediately collapsed backwards, hitting his head on the turf, and panic just ensued. Was actually given CPR and AED treatment on site at the game, and the game was actually postponed about an hour later. Hamlin taken to the hospital in Cincinnati, where he was immediately intubated and put on a ventilator. And as of just about an hour ago, some really good news. He is making some great progress. He is actually communicating. It seems like neurologically things are going well. He's not speaking, but was able to write and communicate that way. And his first communication actually to doctors was, did we win the game? And I guess their response back to him was, you won the game of life. So good news on that front. It sent ripple effects throughout not only sports, but the entire world. So I thought it'd be appropriate to have an expert on today to speak about this situation. And so joining me on the phone here is Dr. James Lee. Dr. Lee is a cardiologist from Henry Mayo and medical doctor of the Roberta G. Velaz Cardiac Cath Lab at Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital. Dr. Lee, good afternoon. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, of course. I'm pleased to have someone with your expertise on, and I am really looking forward to hearing what you had to say. Now, we talked a little bit before we started the show here, and I'd asked you if you're a sports fan, and you said yes, but of course, you're a busy man saving lives, so we appreciate that. But let me ask you, Dr. Lee, have you ever treated or seen an athlete suffer cardiac arrest in the middle of a game the way that Damar Hamlin did on Monday night?
No, unfortunately, this is actually a very rare situation. So most cardiologists will not even ever see this in their career. So if you look at some studies, there's some estimates that this may occur 20 times a year, but there's an increasing awareness now of this type of situation. So sometimes it's not even properly diagnosed. I see a lot of cardiac arrest, but this specific situation is not something that I've seen.
Yeah, and I'm a WebMD doctor, so I don't exactly have the credentials that you do, Dr. Lee, but from some of the research I did, something that came to mind and that a lot of people think that could have been the cause of this was commotio cordis, which in other words is commotion of the heart, translated in Latin. And basically what it is, from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is when a blow to the chest hits at the upstroke of the T wave in your heartbeat, it's a very, very slight, tiny window, basically 15 times faster than the blink of an eye, from what I understand. The heart goes into ventricular fibrillation, or otherwise known as VFib. Can you first of all better explain commotio cordis, and do you have any reason to believe that this may have been what Hamlin suffered from?
That seems to be what is being told on the news so far. A lot of the medical details are not being disclosed on the news, but you did a great job of describing that. That was pretty detailed for someone who's not in the healthcare profession. I could say, a lot of people, since they don't see this, might not even be able to describe it that detailed. But you're right. The reason why it's so rare is it's a condition that is precipitated by blunt force trauma to the chest wall, and the average age where this has been reported is actually a lot younger than Damar's age. He's in his mid-20s, but usually you see this in 8 to 15-year-old. And one of the theories is that, when you're younger, your chest wall may be more compliant, may not be as developed, and so it may be more susceptible to injury to the internal organs. And that window where anything kind of hits the chest is literally a 10 to 30 millisecond interval during the cardiac cycle. So just hitting the chest won't precipitate it. It's got to be like at that exact moment. So it's really unfortunate when this happens, but most sports where this has been reported is actually like baseball, hockey, or lacrosse, where you have these dense projectile objects. So it's those are the sports where it's usually mentioned. But what's happening is that trauma triggers a very dangerous abnormal electrical rhythm that's not sustainable. It leads to cardiac collapse. So basically, the heart can't efficiently function in that rhythm, and the blood pressure drops, and you lose perfusion to all the organs. So people will literally collapse and faint. And unless you reset that heart rhythm with a defibrillator and do CPR, the chance of that patient surviving is actually very slim. So one of the scary things is, Damar was really lucky. You had like paramedics on standby, you had a defibrillator there. But imagine, there can be situations where those types of resources are not available. And in some studies, even when someone gets that attention, even in the best of circumstances, the survival rate could be only around like 50 to 60%. And every minute that passes, then that percentage goes down. So in most scenarios, when a significant time has passed, the survival rates are dismal. So cardiac arrest is very scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was reported that they were able to start performing CPR on Hamlin within 10 seconds of him collapsing. So obviously time is of the essence when these kinds of situations come about. It's interesting you bring it up. You said it was more common in younger people because of the chest cavity being more I guess, for lack of a better term, undeveloped. And so there was actually a situation on Long Island, New York, back in around the year 2000. A 15-year-old kid was hit in the chest with a lacrosse ball, like you mentioned, more common with those kinds of projectiles. And unfortunately, he passed away from dealing with commotio cordis, and of course, like you said, not having the resources available to them, such as the defibrillator, or perhaps just panicking and not knowing what to do while he was collapsed on the field. He unfortunately passed away. That's actually now a guideline for Long Island youth sports. All youth sports now have a defibrillator available to them, no matter where it's played. Kind of goes into my next question for you. As someone expert in the medical field, what do you think that sports can do to better be prepared for these kinds of situations, whether they're common or not in that particular sport?
I think knowing that there's some studies out there where they can identify which sports tend to pose the highest risk and things that have a lot of physical contact, I think there needs to be people on site that have basic life support or even advanced cardiac life support training so that they are well trained in CPR. And a defibrillator, these days, defibrillators are in malls, airports, but, I don't know, it may be a program that doesn't have a lot of funding, and it could be at a random site. It may not be at every site that someone goes to practice. So knowing that this can occur in certain types of sports, I think having that awareness and having those resources available would be great. But even when they are available, the question is recognizing that that's happening can always be challenging. And even in Santa Clarita, in this community, we've been working as a hospital to try to bring increased awareness for the importance of training in basic life support so that we can increase bystander CPR, because there are all different reasons for cardiac arrest. Most of the time when we hear that term, it's associated with heart attacks. So this was a different situation, but a lot of times when people hear cardiac arrest, it's usually in reference to a heart attack. But the same situation occurs when people will collapse from a heart attack and they'll be in cardiac arrest. And the same type of treatment, you need to do CPR, defibrillation. So this is important, not just in athletic sports, but just in the community in general, this awareness, because heart disease and heart attacks, cardiac arrest, these types of conditions remain the number one cause of death worldwide and in the United States for decades.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, good news on Hamlin coming out this afternoon here, as he is now conscious at least, and not communicating verbally, but seems neurologically to be intact at this point, and hopefully on his way to a speedy recovery. Yesterday, the report came out that they were able to lower the level of oxygen Hamlin needed from 100 to 50%. Dumb it down for us, Doc. What goes into the oxygen levels for a person in his situation, and what other signs are someone of your expertise looking for in a case like this?
Yeah, I think when someone goes into cardiac arrest, the brain function is one of our biggest priorities, because if every organ starts functioning fine and recovers, but if the brain doesn't work, then the patient can't be taken off life support. So the key thing is the neurologic recovery. The news that there is progress is that was amazing news. The ventilator, it depends how much injury. When someone receives CPR, there can be some rib injuries. So, you can literally crack the ribs while you're pushing on the chest wall. So that could even affect how efficiently someone is ventilating, when they're on a machine. So that's a really good sign, the fact that the percentage of oxygen required, to keep his bloodstream oxygen levels and organs perfusing is reduced in half. That's a great sign. And they're probably checking daily labs on everything from the liver, the kidney, and seeing how the heart works. The interesting thing about this condition is usually commodio cordis is not, the trauma actually doesn't lead to an actual damage to the heart. So when you have a projectile or any type of trauma to the chest wall, and it actually damages the heart or even bruises the heart, we call that a cardiac contusion. And that could even happen in a car accident when your airbag pops or something hits your chest wall. So what's interesting is this trauma just triggers that dangerous electrical rhythm. But usually the heart is not physically damaged when this occurs.
Gotcha. Okay, I had no idea that even could have a contusion to the heart, but great information. Dr. Lee, I know you only have about another minute. I'm going to put a tinfoil hat on here for a second, so just bear with me. The frenzy that ensued, it brought out a lot of different opinions about what had happened, what truly was the cause. And one of the most controversial takes online was that COVID-19 vaccines or boosters may have been the reason for the cardiac arrest. It was released by someone who claims to be Hamlin's doctor that he did give Hamlin a booster shot on Christmas Eve. I can't speak to the verity of that tweet, although the physician does check out online. Just, you don't have to give me any personal feelings if you'd prefer not to. Understand sensitive topic, but any possibility that this could be related to the COVID-19 vaccines or boosters?
Yeah, I am not aware of any medical information suggesting that could be a cause. I mean, the vaccines have had an amazing impact on us, getting a handle on the pandemic. But unfortunately, with any medical technology, treatment, or even medication, none of these have zero consequences. And so, we've seen even in young males, myocarditis occurring from vaccines. So, but when you look at the overall percentage rate of adverse reactions with vaccines, and you look at, what the virus has done, worldwide, it's still considered a relatively safe therapy. But ultimately, it's going to be a very hard thing to try to link that vaccine to what actually happened, because there's no special test or way to do that. So I think, there may be some theories that might pop up without, when we see the news or read the news, we get so little information compared to what the doctors who are treating him are seeing. So at this point, anything that we say is, speculative. So, we don't have access to, his personal medical records. So, I'm sure they're doing extensive testing over at that hospital to try to see what could have put him at risk for this happening, because this, again, is not a common thing.
Exactly. And that is why so many people have come out in support of him, and it became such an alarming story and really is a household story for everybody across the country here over the last 48 hours or so. Dr. Lee, I know you got to run. I really appreciate the time and spitting some knowledge on us. Dr. Lee, a cardiologist from Henry Mayo, medical director of the Roberta G. Velaz Cardiac Cath Lab at Henry Mayo New Hall Hospital. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Lee.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. So there you have it. Great information from Dr. Lee there. Lots to go and discuss. I think we're going to take a break right now. Is that the plan? Yeah, we're going to take a little break here. Going to come back with some more information about Damar Hamlin, including how the NFL handled the situation and a well-known sports talk show host who's coming under fire for his tweets about the situation. Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to go Beastie Boys or Aerosmith on me there, but I'm okay with the Aerosmith version. Not bad. Honestly, I love my 80s, my 70s rock. Aerosmith, for whatever reason, just doesn't do it for me. I don't dislike them. I will listen to, they got some good ones. Janie's Crying, but some of them, they're a little too whiny for me. Yeah, well, Aerosmith can be a little too whiny for me sometimes. That's all right. I won't hold it against them. Andrew, what's going on,
Yes,
man?
sir. How we doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Doing great. Staying dry over here. Trying to, at least.
Trying to. I think what they're calling this right now is hold on, I had it right here in front of me. It's a bomb cyclone.
Yeah, the bomb cyclone.
And they named it Pineapple Express.
Right, and Pineapple Express. Yeah, that's not new. That's been there, but a lot of people haven't heard that because we haven't had one in quite a while.
Okay,
and just coming from like the Hawaiian Islands and everything like that.
I see. So apparently, California's already had 2 deaths from this. One of them up in the NorCal area near San Francisco. A redwood tree collapsed on a home, and then another person hydroplaning and crashing into a pole, unfortunately. So be careful out there. We are not used to driving in the rain here in California.
No, be careful.
Yeah,
especially extremely wet out there.
This heavy rain here. We didn't do the show last week.
No. Happy New Year, by the way. Happy New Year. We're back.
Happy New Year to you. Holiday season all went well.
Everything went well. Got all the presents. I was on Santa's good list. We were talking about that earlier. I made the good list, so got a couple things, and it was good. Now it's New Year, new me.
New you.
So here we go.
Any New Year's resolutions this year, Andrew? What do you
no, because they always just fail. So I'm not gonna start. Because they end up failing anyway.
I like that. Don't even try. Because if you do, you're gonna quit. So why even try? I like that. That's gonna be my new motto. Don't even try, right? Because you're gonna quit anyway.
To see what happens.
Yeah, I like it. I was spending a lot of time during this break that we had here watching a new TV show on Netflix called The Sinner.
Okay.
And you never seen it?
Nope, haven't heard of it.
Okay. It is badass. It is a good show. I got to tell you. It is a true detective show wrapped into this supernatural umbrella. Not a whole lot of supernatural stuff. So if you're not into that stuff, don't worry. It shouldn't make you scared to watch it. But basically, Detective Harry Ambrose investigates a chilling new homicide in every season. So that's actually what I like most about it. This guy is a detective who has his own deep-rooted, deep-seated issues with his own life. And so his way of going to either bury those issues of his own or to try to help others is to go out and solve these crimes. And he is it's incredible acting.
It seems like it's pretty dark. Is it dark?
It's a little dark.
It's a little dark. I got that. I got the vibes.
I will tell you this. It's not one of those shows where there's a murder on camera every other scene.
Okay. It's a who did it kind of murder every episode.
And it just keeps unraveling and unraveling. And the main characters continue to flip and flop on who you trust and who you can't trust. And it's really well shot, too. I mean,
fantastic. Who's in it? Who do I know?
So this one actually came as a shock to me. Have you ever heard of Bill Pullman?
Yes, because it's the Pullman Paxton, right? Or
I'm not familiar. Tell me.
Because they get the actors confused.
Is that what happens?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. Bill Paxton and Bill Pullman?
Yes.
Okay, I don't even know who Bill Paxton is. Do they look the same? Is that why?
It's the names, and they were actors at the same time. One passed away, unfortunately.
Okay, I see. So Bill Pullman's the one in this, and I didn't realize until I completed the second season of the show. Are you a Spaceballs fan? Did you ever see Spaceballs?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
He is the main character in
Right.
Spaceballs.
See, that's where you knew him from. Yes.
I would have never guessed because he's an old man now. He's in his like late
Yeah.
60s, full gray beard, but it's the same guy, and I couldn't
Wow.
believe
Okay,
it.
that's where you pulled. I pulled obviously one of the greatest speeches ever in cinema history from Independence Day. It's president.
Independence Day.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. No, so I haven't seen Independence Day.
Oh, come on.
Didn't they blow up the U.S. Bank Tower in downtown L.A.? in
They blew
Independence?
the White House and everything like that.
Okay,
It was
so
all
everything.
gone. Yeah.
Everything was free game.
Yes.
This damn aliens just coming in.
But yeah, okay. So I didn't even know he was in that. That's who okay.
So he's the Detective Harry Ambrose, and he is incredible in it, dealing with all this internal drama, conflict he has, and honestly, all the acting is great. Actually, Jessica Biel is the executive director on all 4 seasons.
Oh, fantastic.
She's one of the main stars in season 1, and each season is its own story. Still connects to his past, though, so he's the one common going through the entire series. But even if you picked up at season 3, you'd be able to understand it all. There's no
Right, okay.
continuation.
All right, The Sinner.
The Sinner.
Netflix.
Check it out.
Got it.
Check it out.
On the queue.
Yes. So we just got done talking with Dr. Lee from Henry Mayo, and he was giving us some more information about the whole Damar Hamlin situation. And so I brought up the commotio cordis, which is, again, it's basically translates to commotion of the heart. It's when the heartbeat is in this very small window of a uptick or a beat of the heart. And it's so fast, 15 times faster than the blink of an eye. And if you get hit in the chest or suffer some type of blow to the chest during that exact moment, you can go into VFib, ventricular fibrillation, which is what it sounds like Damar Hamlin went into. Andrew, let me ask you. I mean, when you were you watching this game?
Yeah, I was watching it, and I was actually looking at my phone, and I looked up, and they went to commercial already. I didn't even know what happened. And then they came back after a while. It was like an extended commercial because of all the, commotion that was going on. And they were actually, performing CPR and everything like that. And they didn't know that. And Joe Buck came back, the commentators, and Troy Aikman. And there was a sense of they didn't know, obviously, what was going on either. They were didn't treat it as another injury that, unfortunately, is accustomed to NFL play.
Right.
So it was kind of, what is going on? And then I actually went to Twitter to see the replay because they weren't showing the replay. Mm-hmm. So I went to Twitter and I saw the replay. I'm like, oh, this is different. This is kind of scary. And everybody knew it immediately. And the Bills that were, the teammates were surrounding and went to go check on their teammate and immediately saw that something was wrong.
Right.
Other than, like an ACL or something like that. That something more serious was wrong.
Yeah.
Because, they, like you said, they performed CPR immediately. So they knew that this was not a normal injury, quote, a normal injury.
Right.
So it was scary to watch. And then the timetable after that of, are they going to play a game? Then we heard the 5 minutes thing where they said, okay, once we get them off the field, we're going to give you 5 minutes to prepare, to get, warmed up, and then we'll play again. And then people were like, no, we're not. And then, yes, we are. And then an hour went by, and then they finally postponed the game. It was, breaking news right in front of us, playing out. And nobody knew, even the commentators didn't know what was going on. It was scary.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you bring that up because I'm going to get into the whole timeline of this all. We're going to break down what NFL did. We're going to break down some other things that are happening in the sports world, commentators, stuff like that. But I agree with you. It was very scary and in a different kind of way because you alluded to it. You said that they wouldn't show the replay of the Damar Hamlin hit on ESPN's broadcast of Monday Night Football.
Right.
Now, typically, we've seen that before. Typically, that's when it's such a bone-crushing, brutal-looking hit that they don't want to show it. Or if a player, we've seen, unfortunately, broken legs in basketball, broken legs in football, where the bones just, you see it almost coming out.
You see the Theismann, it comes to mind. Like, that's just replayed over and over. And then you see LT coming up, just like waving the medical team to come in because he saw the broken bone right away. And that keeps getting replayed over and over. But this one, and in recent years, especially with the hard hits and the hitting with the crown of the helmet, they don't show that anymore. after maybe the first one until they realize, oh, this is really bad. Let's not show this.
Yeah, and that's usually probably the NFL telling these broadcast affiliates, do not show hard hits to the head. We've been trying to get rid of it. We're very scrutinized for it, although it's part of the game. And so I think that's part of it as well. But the alarming part to me is that they didn't show it, because when you do go back and watch the replay, it's a very nondescript looking tackle. It doesn't look like anything that would have caused what has ultimately happened here to Hamlin. I mean, T. Higgins, the wide receiver for the Bengals, his helmet goes into Hamlin's chest. But we know the shoulder pads really do go down almost like to the nipple line, just about. So I have a little protection under there around the heart area. But for to see him then collapse, it's like that's unprecedented.
Yeah, and these hits, when we saw it, it wasn't one of those where he got laid out that we've seen before, and it happens sometimes where they actually seize up, where their hands just kind of get stuck for a second, and then they kind of come to.
Right.
It wasn't even that hard. Where this was, like you said, it was a routine, nonchalant, no action, just a tackle. It was nothing hard about it or illegal or anything. There wasn't even a flag. Like, it wasn't flagged or anything.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly how the NFL would want guys to tackle each other. Non-helmet to helmet contact. I mean,
that's what they want. That's the description of a legal tackle.
Right. And so it kind of makes me wonder why there was so much outrage from NFL fans, the way the whole situation was handled. This could have happened in any sport. This could have happened in basketball. This could have happened in, as Dr. Lee mentioned, games where projectiles are being thrown.
It happened before. In the latest that everybody went back to was 98 hockey playoffs. Chris Pronger took a hockey puck right to the chest, and he got up and then collapsed right on the ice.
Right.
And they were able to bring him to really quickly and, got him off on the cart. No ambulance or anything needed there. But it was the same exact thing that happened to Damar Hamlin.
Yeah. And I mentioned the story about a kid on Long Island, a lacrosse player, I think it was around the year 2000, who got hit in the chest. He was a goalie. Unfortunately, he passed away because he had commotio cordis, went into ventricular fibrillation, and he did unfortunately pass away. So that is now a law on Long Island. All sports, youth sports, need to have a fibrillator and a CPR-trained professional there to attend games. I think that would be the next step for all sports here moving forward, especially as Dr. Lee said, younger kids are more susceptible to this because their chest cavity is not fully developed yet.
Yeah, they're going into their bodies.
Right.
So it's even more exposed, I guess, to knock things off rhythm.
Yeah.
Which it was. I mean, it takes you longer to say what the diagnosis was than the time it has that window to get hit and thrown off beat.
Exactly.
Basically.
15 times faster than the blink of an eye is what I got. And by the way, I'm sorry, I got to sing some praises for myself. Dr. Lee said I did a good
description. Yeah, you did a good description after you read exactly off the internet
researched.
there.
I typed that, but I did have to get it off the internet. Yes. See, I'm a WebMD doctor. I told him that. I admitted it. I want to go through the timeline real quick. We kind of broke it down already here, but it's about 8:55 p.m. Eastern time when the play occurs. There's 5:58 remaining in the first quarter of Monday Night Football, Bills-Bengals game. Hamlin tackles Cincinnati wide receiver T. Higgins. The crown of Higgins' helmet hits Hamlin in the chest. Hamlin falls to the ground with him, then pops back up and immediately collapses backward, hitting his head on the turf. And then the referee blows his whistle to stop the clock. I'm thinking this isn't any big deal. Then it becomes 5 minutes. Then it becomes 10 minutes of a delay. Then it's 20 minutes, and all of a sudden an ambulance is coming on the field. Obviously, things are getting crazy. To back things up, though, immediately an emergency action plan is activated. So Troy Vincent, he's an NFL executive vice president for football operations, told reporters on Monday that the emergency plan of action was activated immediately. He said there is an emergency action plan in each and every one of our stadiums that's rehearsed every year. He also said there's an airway management physician at every stadium should there be a need to help with airway management for an individual. And that's exactly what happened here with Damar Hamlin. The league has actually said every club's required to have an emergency action plan for instances of severe trauma. The plan's reviewed by the league, by the player union officials, and it's approved by outside experts. before the season. Requires the designation of a level 1 trauma center along with presence of 2 certified paramedic crews and advanced life support ambulances. So all this to say, the NFL has had a plan for these kinds of situations, as rare as they are, and it looks like they executed it perfectly. So as I said to Dr. Lee, they were able to get out to Hamlin and resuscitate him, or at least begin CPR within 10 seconds of him collapsing backwards and hitting his head. The ambulance comes onto the field in less than 5 minutes. They take him off, and that's when things get a little fuzzy. It's about 9:25 after Hamlin's driven off in the ambulance. He's joined by family members. His mom and I believe his uncle were present. And from there, a proposed 5 minutes of a warm-up for the teams to get ready to play after he departs. So the injury, the hit at 8:55, at 9:25, Hamlin off the field in the ambulance, and then there was a proposed 5-minute warm-up for the teams to get ready to play. That's what was reported by ESPN. Then Bills head coach Sean McDermott and Bengals head coach Zach Taylor finished speaking together on the field, and both motioned for their teams to return to the locker room. ESPN then reports that the game was being temporarily suspended at that time. About 40 minutes later, shortly after 10 p.m. Eastern time, the NFL announces that the game's being postponed with no date scheduled to resume, and that is still the case here at this moment right now. Roger Goodell had this to say: after speaking with both teams, the NFLPA leadership, I decided to postpone last night's game and have our focus remain on Damar and his family, Goodell said on Tuesday in a memo to the teams. So here's kind of where I was in all this. I was watching it happen in real time. I was linked on Twitter, watching all the things going on there, all the people with their hot takes. And it kind of frustrated me because this was an unprecedented situation. And you have fans calling out the NFL, which I know they're an easy target. I know that Roger Goodell is unlikable. He's made a lot of mistakes. The NFL is obviously heavily scrutinized for, as I said before, the bone-crushing hits that are delivered on a weekly basis. But I thought the NFL handled this as well as they possibly could. They were criticized for this proposed 5-minute warm-up to get back on the field, as if that was enough time to get ready to go and play football again after watching one of your teammates get resuscitated on the field. But they ended up doing the right thing anyway. They temporarily suspended the game, but people even have a problem with that for some reason. Oh, what does temporarily suspend mean? What is that? Well, nobody knows what it means because it's never happened before. This is a situation that was fluid, that nobody really truly knew what to do. And I feel the NFL just got raked over the coals for that little idea of this 5-minute warm-up, as if, I saw people on Twitter saying, oh, go out and go play. We got to make our money on TV. Don't you dare stop playing this game. I don't see it that way at all. This was handled as orderly as possible given the circumstances. I don't feel that we've really ever seen a situation like that one, especially one that was in the spotlight. Monday Night Football, mind you, where no other team's playing, where all eyes from football fans are on this one particular game. This wasn't a Sunday afternoon game at 1 o'clock. So maybe that was really why there was so much more outpouring of emotion toward this situation with Damar Hamlin. But the way that the NFL was criticized, in my opinion, was just unfair. I mean, I don't feel that they necessarily were forcing the players to go play or advocating for them to play. As I said, it was a fluid situation. They've never really seen a situation like this happen before. And as I mentioned, they had this emergency action plan prepared, something that they've clearly worked on for many years and have practiced and rehearsed each offseason under the studies and tutelage of professionals in the health industry. So they were prepared at least to save Damar Hamlin's life, which at this point, thank God, it sounds like they're going to, because he is now conscious and he does seem to have his neurological faculties about him as he's recovering in the hospital in Cincinnati. But I think, Andrew, and I want to ask you this, do you think that this world that we live in today, where we're all on Twitter and we all want this instant gratification, the instant update that we feel entitled to, do you feel that had an effect on how people reacted to this in the moment, in that hour window after the injury leading up to the eventual suspension?
without question, of course. And you mentioned it, that it was the NFL who has been criticized over every move they make, good or bad. And especially with this, I saw it as just like what you said. They kind of handled it the best they have, or the best they could have in this situation. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know, like Roger Goodell didn't know that he was getting CPR. I'm sure he did before anybody else knew, but other than, the healthcare workers that were working on him. But it was coming in so fast, they had to do something. So they just said, wait, we'll suspend it. Maybe he's back up. Oh, okay, he's great. What if he got on his feet and just said, oh, we're fine? Then temporarily suspended 20 minutes? Okay. But he didn't. So then they were like, oh, longer, and then they heard it. And then as they came in, okay, now we're going to cancel the game or suspend the game permanently for that. And then see what comes out, see how he's feeling. Even if he, awoke the next day, then they might have played this week if he was fine, or the severity. But they didn't know that in the time.
Exactly.
And in that hour, they were seeing how it went because they didn't know.
Right. And
so they couldn't do – they did the best job they could have and not play him. If they did say play or we're playing the next day, then the NFL would just be done pretty much with everybody attacking them. They've done everything right so far, in my mind.
And we're on the same page here. We're on the same wavelength. I think they did. And the images that came out of the Buffalo Bills players, and I'm sure some Bengals players as well, crying on the field.
Yeah, almost immediately.
Right. Because
they knew what was their player, and, the brotherhood of the NFL on the Bengals side, they're seeing somebody that is wearing the same pads, playing the same game they are, getting resuscitated on the field.
Right. I mean, literally, his heart is stopped, and he's on the field. I mean, it is crazy to think about. So when those images come out of the players, his teammates, and even his opponents, like you said, the brotherhood of the NFL, to see that happen, it seemed brash for the NFL to demand the players to go play. And I think people mistook that as the 5-minute warm-up. I think it was a suggestion. And then they ultimately allowed the players and the coaches to make the decision, and they decided to put their players in the locker room.
They did, and one of the officials, pretty much, I forgot his name, but the right-hand man to Goodell, right under him, who goes to all the games, all the big games, all the Monday Night Football games, came out hours later or the next day saying no official in the NFL said 5 minutes. That came from somewhere, and I don't even know if they've gotten reports of where that came from. Somebody heard it, and then they just reported that 5 minutes, because players actually started, like Burrow started throwing, and Stephon Diggs on the Bills, one of the captains, who was one of those players that was visibly upset and crying, was seen trying to rally his guys in a huddle try to get back in there in that mindset of playing. But that the NFL came out and said, we never said 5 minutes. And this is like from the second guy up to the commissioner. And I forgot who that name was. But we never said 5 minutes. Yeah. So we just were going with the reports that they had at the time and made the news from there. Right. Or the decisions from there.
Right. I guess, and then to wrap this one up before I go to my next thing here, what most frustrated me is that everybody in our generation now, and, we're all guilty of it with smartphones, we demand immediate real-time updates with answers all the time. And ultimately, I think the NFL did as well as they possibly could have in that situation. You got people on one side of the aisle saying, oh, ESPN broadcasters did such a great job of handling that and being empathetic about it. And then you have the other side saying, I can't believe they said it this way, or they put the words temporarily suspend. What does that even mean? It means the game is suspended temporarily. What else do you need to know? Ultimately, in my opinion, based on this emergency action plan that I've now researched and discovered has been part of the NFL's operation here for every team over the last several years, they were prepared for a situation like that. They acted on it accordingly, and I thought it was all done very well by the league to wrap it up quickly and make sure, the most important thing, that Damar Hamlin's alive today.
Yes, and that was everybody's quick reaction. The majority let me say that the majority of everybody's reaction was, let's not talk about football right now. That was almost immediately once they heard the severity of the situation.
Yeah.
Which was great to see.
Exactly. And, some great has come out of this situation, as sad as it is, although hopefully getting better now with Hamlin at least responsive in the hospital. Again, he is still with a tube in his throat, and he is conscious now, though, and able to communicate, at least writing on paper, not able to verbally speak at this point yet. But he had a toy drive that he was running for his, charity that he runs, and his mother, I guess, also has a preschool that she runs, and so I think they were affiliated in some way. In any case, he had a link on his Instagram or his Twitter to it, and his goal was for $2,500. He's, let's be honest about it. Damar Hamlin was a day 3 draft pick a couple years ago, not a highly touted player, but everything that we've heard about him since is that he's not only a great character and person off the field, but his work ethic on the field is what has actually gotten him into a starter's role with the Bills in the last year or so. And Damar Hamlin's charity, looking to raise $2,500, has now reached over $7 million for the toy drive that he is looking to give back to kids from different backgrounds. Great news on that front, and great news to hear that he's doing well and hopefully a speedy recovery. We got one more thing to talk about on this entire situation. A very well-known and usually highly controversial sports commentator is under fire for his tweets about the situation. We're going to get into that when we come back from the break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Out of Bounds with Matt Frieda here on your hometown station, KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. 1254. You're listening to Out of Bounds with Matt Frieda here on your hometown station, KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220. Well, we have been talking about the most important story right now in sports. That's, of course, the Damar Hamlin situation. But, the NFL as a whole has really been the focal point. And now we're hearing an idea, because of the implications that game between the Bengals and the Bills had as far as the playoffs, of there being potentially an extra playoff team added in both conferences, the AFC and the NFC. The Bills battling for the first seed with the Kansas City Chiefs. Meanwhile, the Bengals are somewhere between 3 and 4. They're fighting for their own division. And so really that game on Monday night was a huge deal. And the idea they may be adding a new playoff team is crazy to me. They've already added an extra team within the last 3 years. It used to be 6 teams from each conference. Now it's 7. It'd be unprecedented to see them add an 8th team now for this year. But we saw, as in all the leagues across North American sports with COVID, sometimes you have to pivot when these types of situations present themselves. And I teased right before the break, a very controversial sports commentator, well known in the industry, is under fire for a tweet that he sent out in real time of the Damar Hamlin injury. And that is from Undisputed's Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless, well known for his first show on First Take on ESPN with Stephen A. Smith, and has now been doing Undisputed with Shannon Sharpe, former NFL tight end. And he's kind of known for playing this shtick, having this, persona as a person that doesn't, I don't even know if he believes half the things that he says. He's doing it for clicks. He's doing it for the attention. He's playing a character, in my opinion. And that's fine if he wants to do that. I really genuinely don't believe that he believes everything he says. But when you have that type of persona, that aura about you, that people associate with you, you're going to become under fire when you say certain things. And so on Monday night, 9:30 p.m., just about 35 minutes after the Hamlin injury, about 5 minutes after he was taken out in the hospital, Skip Bayless tweeted, "No doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of this game. But how? This late in the season, a game of this magnitude is crucial to the regular season outcome, which suddenly seems so irrelevant." And that was met with the most hostility I may have ever seen on Twitter, and that's saying a lot because Twitter is a cesspool. But tweets from professional athletes, Kendrick Perkins, former NBA player, replying, "You're a sick individual," real talk. Former NBA player Isaiah Thomas, "I hope they fire you, bro. For you to even think of the game is very sad." Now, Here's the thing. I don't know what was so objectionable about Skip Bayless's tweet. Let me read it again. No doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of this game now. How, though? This late in the season, a game of this magnitude, as I said, it is a very important game as far as playoff seeding, is crucial to the regular season outcome, ... which suddenly seems so irrelevant. To me, I think this was one of those things a headline reader kind of is guilty of. You looked at the first half of the tweet, you saw who it was coming from, aka Skip Bayless, who's controversial in his own right, and you immediately went to attack him. He even says at the end of the tweet, it suddenly seems so irrelevant, the game. And for him to be under fire the way he is, a little unfair in my opinion, but I guess it comes with the territory when you're Skip Bayless. He's making millions of dollars anyway. I think he'll live all right. Hey, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for listening. Out of Bounds with Matt Frieda here on your hometown station, KHTS FM 98.1 AM 1220. Peace.